Sometimes having a single signature pamphlet is just not enough. Maybe you've got 4 pieces of paper that you folded, and that's given you 16 pages. But 16 pages isn't enough for what you have to do, for the day out that you're going to have or the weekend trip that you're going to take. Maybe you want to fold more pages than that, but if you combine them together in one signature, the thickness of the paper makes your whole book too thick. That's why we have a Japanese double pamphlet option. This is where you have a signature on each side of a pleated spine. And this will allow you to have 32 pages if you have the 16-page signatures. And with thicker paper, I recommend that you not go more than 4 folded pieces in each signature because it can get quite bulky. Okay? But I wanted you to see this. So this is just a piece of watercolor paper that I have painted with acrylic paint, and I have, before I painted it, marked it with the grain direction in light pencil streaks. Now this is just a scrap, but I folded this so that you could see that you need a pleat that is poking inwards at the center and then has these other folds like this. Essentially they're poking outwards if you flip them over. Okay? And what's going to happen, I don't have signatures that fit this paper, but that would be on this side and this one would fit on that side, and then what you would have is a book like this with 2 signatures. And these can be great for travel journals if you're going away for a short trip, or for notes, anything. It's a really good structure to learn how to make. There's a number of different ways to make them. One of the limiting factors is how wide is the sheet of paper that you have for your cover sheet. Again, we want the cover material to fold back, or you can cut it right on the edge and just have it overhang however much you want. But if you're going to have it fold back, then you need to, like we did with this one. If you want it to fold back here like this, you need to take that into account. Otherwise, you could just trim this right here, and then you need a less wide sheet of paper. I like to fold things in because that gives me double thickness of my cover material when I'm sketching, and I like that extra bit of firmness, but it's not necessary. I've used a non-folded cover pamphlet at the state fair and had no problem working in that for long days in the various animal barns. So it's not essential, but it's one factor to keep in mind while you're thinking about what you're going to do. Now, there's another way that you can do the Japanese pamphlet if you have only narrower sheets of paper, and that's to do a split cover. And the split cover is essentially what we would have had with this peak in the middle, but we didn't have the width on this sheet of paper, so it was cut instead. And then all of these things will be put together. Take a little bit of maneuvering around. This folded signature will fit into that fold there, and you'll allow the same space at the head and the tail. And this one will fit on the other side behind. So it'll look like that. Now, managing all this and poking the holes when you have thick paper like this can be an issue. So before you start poking holes, misalign things and so on, I want you to think through the problem. And one of the things that can happen is you can decide that I'm going to poke my holes, I'm going to put this where I want it so that I have the space I want to have above and below. I'm going to mark my holes and I'm going to poke this one, and then I'm going to use this first piece as my template for poking the holes in the other signature. Okay? Now, any of these options I'm giving you are going to take some adjustment and some close attention paid to like the space that you leave here and there. So one of the things you might want to do is get a piece of paper, make a template, fold it, and then make these marks on it. Now I've already made the marks on it so that you can see them on the camera. Basically what I've done is I've marked the tail of the cover, which is the base of this sheet template. Then I've allowed space that's going to go between the cover and the bottom of the text. That's the tail of the text. Then up here I have the head marked and the head of the text marked. And those should ideally be the same amount of space. I don't have this aligned properly yet, but if I align it with my template, then those are even. And then I've marked my 5 holes, my center hole and my end hole and my top hole, and then the 2 in between, just as you do in your other pamphlet stuff. Then what you do is you take this template and you turn it inside out and you base align it with the cover, because that's what you're lining up, not the bottom of the text. The bottom of the text is here, but we're lining up the bottoms of the cover with this template. We're going to punch it just as we did for the other example of the single pamphlet. You're going to have your hand in a V shape, holding it all stable. You're going to take your awl and punch straight down, and you're going to punch into a towel and a cutting mat so that you don't injure the tip of your awl. Then you would take the same thing and you would align the second part of the book in exactly the same way as you did here. Okay? So remember, don't get this turned around because it's actually going to be backwards. This one's going to be like this, but remember these have to be together. So when you put them in, you have to remember they're like this, and this is the tail down here, then this is the tail down here. So when you put these together, don't put your template down here, which is not the tail. Put your template this way, because this is the tail. Otherwise, things are not going to match up. Those are the types of things that you have to look for. I encourage you to make a dummy first with a bit of newsprint, something that's inexpensive, and work it out and label everything. So this is your front cover, and this is my back cover, and I've got them labeled so I know this is my head, and that's my head, so that I can look at a glance and see that everything is aligned. My signatures are also labeled at the top, so I know that this is the head here. Okay, so that you can keep everything aligned. Now, if you're working with thinner paper, you can fold everything, you can put it together like this, and I'll insert a diagram to show you this. You can have it all together like this, and you can punch, as I was saying before. But with thicker paper like this, it slides around too much, and you're really going to have to think about, how do I take this apart and get punching accuracy? Because that's the key thing. Now, if you don't want to do the split cover because you have a piece that is long enough to do one full cover, this is how you make the one full cover. You cut the width that you need, just as I've done here. And actually, this was the width of the paper, so I cut the height that I need, and this is allowing for a little bit more above and below at the head and the tail. So I'll have a little bit of overhang of my cover. I had just then simply folded it in half like this. Just folded it right in half to find the center. Then what I did is I measured 3/4 of an inch from the spine into the cover, at the head and at the tail, and made a little tick mark with pencil. These lines I can easily erase, and my tick marks I can easily erase when I'm done. I did this at 3/4 of an inch because this is thick cover material, and you'll find when you use different cover materials, some is easier to bend than others. I think ideally it's nice if you have an inch, but 3/4 is okay, and I wanted to not have too much taken away from here because I wanted as much width this way as possible. Less than 3/4 of an inch, this is too thick a paper to fold nicely and do the sewing that we need to do. It just becomes more cumbersome. Okay, now that you've done that and marked those tick marks, you do the same thing on the other side. 3/4 of an inch in at the head, 3/4 of an inch in at the tail. And then what you do is you take this bone folder and you take your ruler and you line up your ruler so that, and you always want to do the scoring on the side as you're moving out, because if you do it on this side and score here and you for some reason misplace the ruler and it's too far in, then this is going to be too narrow and these two folds won't match, and they need to fold up in order for us to be able to sew them properly. Okay? So I'm going to line these up, and it's just like the other scoring we've done. Once they're lined up, push into the edge of the ruler with your bone folder. Don't use the point of your bone folder. Just go once before you remove the ruler. Just push up. Don't push up and over. Once you've restated it, make here, and then it should align when it folds over just like that, and you can fold it once, twice if you need to. Okay, then you want to swing it around because that's just easier to do it that way. Line up those other two. And again with the bone folder. Push up. Make sure that's lining up here. It is. Now we've got that central pleat that we need so that our signatures can fit nicely right in here. When they are in there and everything has been sewn up, then they'll be contained like that. Remember that you have to knock up your signatures so that they are all lined up at the bottom of the signature, but you can't knock it up with your cover because you have to allow that space at the head and the tail. Now you can grip these like this. If that's even, I can slide them once I've got them together. Got them slid like this. Okay, and I can open them like this. And then this is much easier to hold than the other. I can fold it like this. Okay. Better to fiddle a little with it than to. Now remember, the template has to be even with the cover at that level right here. Okay, and it is. An optical illusion that it isn't, because these are flapping around a little bit, but you want to have it the same over there. Okay, so I'm going to come down here and have this even with that. I'm going to fold this up now a little bit more so that it's in a V, so that I can poke straight down. Now it looks like things have come while I've been talking and getting other things. It looks like things might have come a little bit out of alignment, but I think it's pretty close, so I'm going to go for it for purposes of this. I'm going to shoot straight down in each one of my little holes. You could use clips to hold things together if that helps you. I always find that those things are more of a pain. One more. Almost there. But again, if that seems an uncomfortable thing for you to do, don't do it. I'm a little off. You won't see it, but I'm a little off on that one, but the other ones I'm all right on. If you feel you've gone a little off, or you might go a little off, do it the other way where you're doing it in portions. I'm just going to make these holes a little bigger to make sure they're all aligned. Where you start is where you're going to finish. And you're going to be either inside the second signature or inside the first signature. There's no option to have your dangly bits on the outside with this construction. I'm going to start on the inside of the back structure, or the back cover. I'm going to go in, and it's just the same stitch we did before. Into the center hole, up one. I'm looking on the back to see that. If I can't get through it, I'm going to come to the front and restate that, get them all lined up, and then I can go back and just poke right through. Nice and tight, pushing down here. There we go. Flipping over, going to come back. Remember, don't go through your thread. I have to get my head in the way, I think, for a little bit in order for me to see where my thread is. I got to hold it up to my eye here. There we go. Sorry I had to take that out of frame, but my eyes are not what they used to be. Okay, now we're going to skip the middle stitch and go to the next one. Then we're going to go, see, that's how it was off a little bit on that hole, but that's going to be okay. Down to the last one, nice and tight. Go back into this other one. I'm going to have to hold this one close to me again, out of frame. There we go. Nice and tight. Now, we're going to go into the center hole. And we're going to come up on the opposite side of that long stitch. Everything's nice and snug. We're going to go left over and under the right and pull it tight. We're going to go right over and under the left and pull it tight. Then you can either clip them off or you can leave them a little bit long and circle them around a couple times as I showed you for the other structure. I'm just going to clip these off. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this up, so we're going to close this signature. Okay, and then we're going to flip it over. And we're going to close this signature and the cover. And we're going to be careful doing that because this is the first time we're stating the real fold that's going to be the cover of the book. Okay. One of the things that you'll see now is the wonkiness of that one hole doesn't show because it wasn't that wonky, and because now the way this is all solidified up, it's folded around and you don't see it. There's a little bit of cracking on the paper. That's because this particular watercolor paper, which I'll list at the bottom of the screen, is not the best for folding even with the grain. But I'm not too concerned about that. I had the width that I wanted. That was my main concern. When we get in here, one of the things that we'll see is that this space here and this space here is even with the next signature, head, tail, and headspace. So that was the crucial thing for me to hold on to, and I managed to hold on to that. Okay? It may seem complicated. This is the first one of these I've made for a number of years. I used to make them all the time, and then pretty much I probably could have done them in my sleep. So what I would like to point out to you is that if you make a couple of them as a practice with some inexpensive paper, then when you make one with some good paper, you'll have a very good result. Okay? But this is a great way to use a couple of scraps that you have from paper tearing for bigger projects. Now, the only other thing that you have to do, and I'm not going to show you this because we've already gone through it, is you have to measure the width of your signature, add the amount you want for an overhang at the foredge, then you have to put that measurement from the spine out to the foredge, mark it, head and tail, score it, and fold it, and that's your flap. Or simply mark it and cut it, and then you don't have a folded in edge. And then your book is good to go. And you have 32 pages. So this is the Japanese Double Pamphlet.